Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're listening from. This is Michael Goldberg. Yes, you're not having deja vu. This is Job Seeker Journeys, the US version. Earlier this morning, we did Job Seekers Journeys for Europe and Africa, and that did really well. And so we're hoping that we can come to you live again. And I'm going to bring you three amazing job seekers today, as well as bring on an immigration attorney. So the topic will focus on these three excellent individuals who are all up in the Boston area and attend, I believe, or have attended Northeastern University. I'll introduce them in a minute. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Michael Goldberg. I'm a job search consultant, but also a talent acquisition consultant going into startups and helping organizations start up their talent functions by looking at processes, tools, technologies, programs. And I also help in turnaround situations when the recruiting functions and HR functions are flailing. So, but enough about me. Today, like I said, we've got three special guests. I'll introduce them to you one by one. We've got Pratik Jain, we've got Vasal, and we've got Vaibhav Danwarkar. So welcome everybody. How are you?
Hey Mike,
Hi,
thank you for
very
bringing
good.
us on
How
the show.
about you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for being on the show. Like I said, today we're going to focus on international students who have either recently graduated or about to graduate, or maybe they're a year away from graduation, and they're looking to stay in the United States to have a full-time opportunity through an H-1B visa and eventually the green card, which allows them to remain in the United States and have work authorization here in the U.S. In about 30 minutes, we'll be bringing on an immigration attorney to answer everyone's questions, of course, our guests. But if you certainly have questions along the way, I definitely want you to have those questions ready, add them in the comments, and we'll go from there. So let's start with you all. And so what I'd like for you to do is just do a brief, high-level 30-second summary, 30 second to a minute summary about yourself. And we'll start with Pratik. Tell us about yourself, Pratik, what you're looking for, who you are, what you're doing now, and let's go from there.
So Mike, first of all, thank you for bringing us on the show. I'm a software engineer currently working for National Grid. In 2019, I've completed my master's in project management, majoring in analytics and agile. Currently, for National Grid, I'm managing the different kinds of project management and agile tools under Project Management Office and helping them to design how the tool is going to be decreasing their impediments which they're facing because they're transferring from um, waterfall to agile. So there is a transitioning happening. So I'm the person who's helping them to transition because I have a knowledge of how the waterfall works and how the agile works, and also a software knowledge of how the tools can help to reduce the time. I'm seeing myself more towards data in future because what I'm right now noticing is the more the data I'm harnessing is helping the company. So my goal is to be a project manager practitioner in the world of data. Yeah.
I love it. Thanks. Excellent job, by the way.
Okay.
So are you currently working? Like, are you doing an internship or do you currently have a full-time role?
I'm having a full-time role.
Perfect. And do you have, is it a part of your F1 visa or?
Yeah. So right now I'm on my 1 year optional practical training. Um, so that's gonna get over in the month of August, and then I will be going for my STEM extension.
Got it. All right. And Mehak, let's hear from you. Don't forget to take yourself off mute. There you go.
Sure. Thank you, Mike. So my name is Mehak. I have recently completed my second master's, MS in project management from Northeastern, with my concentration in agile. I have around 6 years of work experience handling different projects in different companies. And along with it, I have an MBA degree from India, which is in international business and finance, where I learned about import, export, trade policies, financial management. So right now, I'm currently in my OPT period with my EAD looking for jobs. But because of this pandemic, I'm facing the difficulty being an international student and with jobs not coming up or projects on hold. So that's about me.
So what when you say OPT, for those people that don't understand what that, tell us what that is.
So this OPT is the same optional practical training which is given to international students or basically anybody who is on student visa. Once they complete their courses, basis the courses, it is 1 year or with a STEM extension for 3 years. So my course was a STEM extension. Currently, I'm on my initial OPT, which is like I just graduated in March 2020. So I have it for 1 year, and post that I have 2 years extension as well, which can happen as a STEM extension for me. So it's kind of a work permit where we can use our skills or qualifications or knowledge that we have gained while doing our MS degree to practice at practical world.
Got it. Perfect. Thanks, Mahek. I appreciate that. All right, Vaibhav, you're up.
Thanks, Michael, for inviting me to this show. I'm
A little
privileged
louder.
to be
Sorry,
here.
a little louder.
I'm privileged to be here, Michael. Thanks for inviting me.
Sure.
So, my name is Vaibhav, and I am working as a lead business architect for the Cognizant Technology Solutions. Uh, I'm working on a project where we are handling the technicians who are being sent to the data centers of Google. So since the Google is managing these technicians, so we are working with these technicians to streamline the operations of the field work for any downtime of the servers, etc., etc. So basically, my objective of my role is to bring the value to the business uh, and the increase the overall productivity. Like Pratik, I have accomplished my master's last year from Northeastern University with the major of project and agile management. So it was a wonderful experience. Uh, and after that, I kind of struggled and was in the phase like Mehak is in right now of finding a job. But eventually, I found one, and I feel myself lucky enough to have it.
So are you on an F1 as well?
Yes, I'm on F1 visa right now.
Through
So this
when?
is my initial OPT year, which is going to be extended soon in August.
Got it. So you have both you and Pratik have another year here in the United States.
No, we have 2 more years after
Two
this.
more?
Yeah,
Two?
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
2 more years.
Okay.
So
All right.
there are two types of OPTs. One is the STEM OPT and one is the normal OPT. So in a normal OPT, we get only one extra year. I think it is I'm sorry, it is only 1 year as the optional practical training, but in a STEM OPT, we get 2 more years as an
So
extension. Yeah.
got it. So do both of you have that 2-year extension?
Yes, we
Yes,
do.
we three. I think even Mahek is also having 1+2. So the
Yes, yes, I
yeah,
have.
Ours
But
will
she
be
needs to
smaller
find a
than that
job
actually.
though at some point.
correct,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Also during this OPT, I would want to add in your first OPT, we just get once we get our EAD, which is a work authorization, we just get 90 days to find a job. So if we
Correct.
don't get a job within those 90 days, we have to just leave states and go back to our home country.
Yeah. So that's a tough position to be in. But what's good about the three of you is you're each looking for something a little different, but have very unique skill sets and backgrounds that you can bring to the organizations, even on that F1 visa for the next year or two, depending upon what's allowed by law. And so, what when I worked for Freeman and American Heart Association, I did a lot of processing, not so much on F1s, but H1B and green card was where we focused a lot of the time. So, and for those of you who are listening to the broadcast here, definitely give us a shout out. Tell us where you're watching from, what you're looking for. If you're a recruiter, all three of these folks are eligible to work in the United States for at least the next year or so. So definitely reach out to them, and I'll put toward the end of the show where to find them. So let's do. So when and we'll start with Mehek. Mehek, what is the superpower that you can bring to employers?
Sure, that's a good question to ask, Michael. So I believe I'm empathetic, and I get to understand what the person is saying. And when I say that I'm empathetic and that is useful for me and as a superpower, since I have done my project management degree, project management is basically everything about more of communication. So until and unless you understand the requirements correctly, we cannot give a proper project. So the project cannot start, or project cannot end properly if we don't have that. So I believe I have that superpower with me, and at the same time, I'm an analytical person as well. So I have done courses on business analysis as well. I I'm a data-driven person who can just work with different data using tools like Excel and Tableau. So I think these are the two superpowers that I have.
Nice. I like someone with more than one superpower. And it's good to be right. You got to be able to bring value to the organization. And that's what most recruiters and hiring managers are looking for, is what can you do to help us? So, all right, Vaibhav, your turn. Tell us what your superpower is.
I believe my adaptability is my superpower, which makes me spontaneous and very dynamic when it comes to different types of assignments. So the organization which is going to hire me would look for the uniqueness of my skill set, and not something which is similar to the other thousands of applicants who are applying for the same job. So I always had this question coming from the employers that what difference do you bring to the table? So
How do
yeah,
you answer
that's what
that?
matters. Yeah. So I answered that question in a way that uh, I said that it's not just my experience or my skill set, but my adaptability, which is one of my working principle, which has helped me to take on new assignments, different types of assignments, uh, and increase my agility uh, to uh, to accomplish those tasks in given time. So yeah.
So it'd be your agility to kind of be what we would call the utility player, someone that can, in baseball, U.S. baseball, that's someone who can play all positions in the IT realm of things.
Yeah.
Would that be a good
Yeah.
assumption? So you can
Yeah.
do applications and infrastructure and project management and program management. Can you
Yes.
do all that?
As far as my experience is concerned, I started as a software engineer, so I have the foundation of how to build a software. I understand all the aspects of building a software from starting to the end of that project until it's closed. So after that, I moved into the business aspect of the industry, which is business analysis and requirements management, being more on the client facing side of the project, where you have to interact with all types of stakeholders uh, on a daily basis, and negotiate with them on a huge deals of big projects.
So can you talk geek and talk in layman's terms when, like a sales
Yeah.
engineer? You're familiar with a sales engineer, correct?
uh, yeah,
The ability
kind
to
of.
talk to your
Yeah,
technical
yeah,
folks
yeah,
on one side of the table, and then when you're
yeah,
dealing with customers, you can talk in layman's terms to say, this is actually how it works. To me, that's your superpower, because
yeah,
there aren't many people that can do that.
yeah.
That's what
Okay.
I'd go with. My
Right.
recommendation, that's what I'd go with. You're a utility player in all things IT, but your true standout superpower is your ability to talk in technical terms with internal stakeholders and talk in layman's terms with external stakeholders. There you go. See, I helped you right there, man. You're set. You're set. All right. Well, besides cutting his own hair, Pratik, what is your superpower?
So, as Mahek said, empathetic, as Vaibhav mentioned, agility. I'm more of industrious, agile, and connective person. I like to understand things before getting them to work. This is what my job demands, and this is what I am all about. Before getting or before understanding things, I would like to research and come up with the solution. So I can say I'm a solution oriented person, and that's how I see myself. As you mentioned, Mike, it's important for us to connect both the dots, the stakeholder and the technical team player. So I'm a middleman, I can say that, wherein I'm wearing a multiple hats of communicating the technical language to the stakeholders in terms of a simple layman language. And that's why I try to get some business and try to resolve the problems which I'm getting in the business. And I believe that a person cannot learn all the tools or all the software. So it's better to be a person who can manage people, who knows their USP or who knows what they are good at. So sometimes I feel that I know how to deal with, and my trait says that it's better to be a management person where you can manage a lot of talent. So in my experience, I've seen there are so many talents in the world, as Jack Ma said, that you don't need to be a specialist, but you just need to be a people's person who can work with a specialist. So
Yeah, so it's interesting. So when the reason why either I don't know if it'd be recruiters, it's more on the hiring manager side. So when you're sitting in front of the hiring manager for in that interview, and they ask you why you, a lot of people have trouble answering that question. And one of the things that I would encourage you all to work on is, in one sentence, what makes you unique over everybody else. So, and I understood why you were explaining it to get to the point, but make it stand out. Definitely don't use the word "I'm a people person." That everybody says that. As a recruiter, I heard that through my career, literally every day of the week. And so, if we weren't people persons, we wouldn't be doing the jobs that we do. So, the one challenge I have for the three of you is to really go back and nail that down. And I'll send you something, an exercise. And one exercise that you can do is you start with a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper, you write down everything about yourself. I'm a fast learner. I understand agile, until you've exhausted everything. So this is your chance to, on a piece of paper, brag about yourself. Then what I want you to do is I want you to get the little sticky notes. You know what I'm talking about? And take those sticky notes and write down everything that you just wrote down. I don't care if you have 100 sticky notes. But what I want you to do, especially for the long-winded ones, because if you're telling me about what you can do and it can't fit on the sticky note, it's too long. So what you do is you start to weed out the ones that look the same. They're redundant, so we don't need them, right? You might put, I'm a problem solver, and I help people with issues. Those two are basically the same thing. So you get rid of the one that sounds less impressive, and then you weed it out until you've really narrowed it down to like your top 2 to 3 core skill sets. And the one that stands out the most is the one that's going to be your unique superpower. So there's a little freebie tip there on how I coach my clients to figure out what their superpowers and to help them develop their 30-second pitch. So you should definitely try that.
Thank you for that tip.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Mike, for that tip.
Yeah, no worries. So, okay. So what are some of the techniques or hacks or whatever you want to call it that that are currently working for you in your job search? Mahek, you go first. Ladies first.
Sure. So I'm still looking for one, but I'm trying everything that I think could help me, because I have been attending a lot of sessions or webinars on job search as well. I'm just advancing my skills. I'm doing LinkedIn Learning. I'm doing some other courses online just to enhance my skills. So that is what I'm doing right now, just to add something on to my resume, or maybe just going back to my course, reading through things that I feel I am better at, just to advance that. So, so I think that's what I'm doing. I feel that that could help me in getting a job search soon.
So one of the questions I have for you, Mike, is these webinars that you're attending, is there the ability to interact with other people on the webinars?
Yes, so that has been really helpful for me, because that's the place that is helping me to network with people. So I believe this is the right time to do networking as well, and that's what I have learned through the webinars as well. So I just network with people, send them messages, not just to ask for a particular job, but just to create a network, just to have a reference. Or maybe if somebody is into a project management field, I prefer talking to them, saying that, okay, I saw that you are doing this, I would want to know what how does your day look like. And because I'm looking in the same area, so I just wanted to know if there is something that I need to learn or be prepared just for my next interview. So these are a few things that I'm doing.
Excellent. All right. Pratik, since you're not on mute, we'll let you go.
So, what really helped me to find a job, Mike, is whatever skills I have written on my resume, I have actually made a point that I should list it down in hard copies and create my own portfolio and try to sell my skills rather trying to sell myself. So I have a whole list of portfolios wherein I have tried to code something, make some dynamic dashboards, come up with some stories wherein company can use that and help to increase their sales or anything where they're working. So before figuring out a company, I used to figure out that how this company is functioning, where this company is functioning, and what are the pain points. And I used to focus more that how as a person I can use my skills to reduce their problems and come up with the solutions. So my tactic to find a job was I can say it was a quality search rather a quantity search, because I used to spend more time towards understanding what company requires rather just applying for the company and finishing my target for the day. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so um, I think that's great. You are definitely going about it the right way. It's to understand what's important to you and then focus on the companies that kind of match what's important to you in terms of your values and your cultures.
Yep.
And I like how you target the companies and you target people inside the organizations. Most people just target jobs. So that goes
Yes.
back to the quantity versus quality, right? So um, thank you very much and great job. All right, Vaibhav, you're on.
So I totally agree with Pratik. I mean, quality is much more preferred than quantity because it saves time and it's smart work and not the hard work. So what I believe, the things which have helped me in my job search is to how to present your skills to the employer and not just showing those skills on your resume or cover letter. So uh, I prepared my LinkedIn by looking at other experience and similar experienced persons and influential personalities on LinkedIn. So that helped me in preparing my summary of my LinkedIn, and then the profile summary on my resume. It essentially helps me. Apart from that, what I believe is the important hack is following up with your colleagues, friends, and employers. I believe that is one of the most important thing that you should do on a daily basis when you are on your job hunt, because I mean everyone is so busy during this time that they don't remember that you have sent them an email uh, for any openings in their organizations. So following up is the second most important thing after your resume, LinkedIn, etc., etc. The third hack, I believe that it is another important thing is it is the more of a mental hack, psychological hack, because in my experience, uh, there were times that I was totally frustrated. So there is a very thin line between being consistent uh, with your job search and getting demotivated. So you have to keep the balance and keep going on and looking for a job.
Yeah, I think that you bring up some really good points. I think a lot of people, it's interesting, at least here in the States, um, they're either sticking their head in the sand and waiting for the COVID and the protests to go away, which it's not happening.
Right.
It's going, both will be here for quite some time. Um, I mean, here in Dallas, we're already starting to see a second wave of, or in Texas, we're one of the states that, along with I think Arizona and maybe Florida, that have just seen a huge spike in uh, uh, hospitalizations and illnesses. So you're going to find out, it's going to be a while. So you can't give up, right? So don't stick your head in the sand. Keep going. The one thing I will say is, most people think that job seeking is about apply, 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 and that's not it. It's really about networking and finding networking groups that may have some job seekers in it, but more importantly, participate by looking at meetup events or Eventbrite to see what kind of IT related, project manager related deals that are happening in Boston and then Mahake in Chicago. So that will help you tremendously because you're going to you want to meet people who are working. You don't just want to hang out with the people that aren't working. Does that make sense?
Right, absolutely right.
Yeah.
I believe I and Pratik indulged in attending career fairs uh, post our graduation, which helped us to introduce ourselves to the industry experts at the job fair and the recruiters. So it gives you a visibility in the market, and I mean, if you have presented yourself well in front of them, they might remember you for quite a long time, and they might get back to you when they need someone for a specific job that you're looking for.
To add on Vaibhav's point, Mike, it's more of building the relationship, not just the network, but to cultivate the trust. I understand that it's not going to work once or twice, but if you show that why are you unique from the crowd, definitely the recruiters will see you, or the person whom you are connecting in the company will see you. Because I assume that there are a lot of people who are trying to connect to different people who are working for the company, but they are not trying to maintain that relationship, which is needed. So to maintain the relationship, what I personally did was I started showing that why I'm different from others, not by messaging them rigorously, but by showing my work on public feeds such as LinkedIn, tried to write up some good columns, made some, as I mentioned, try to showcase my skills. So by networking, we need to understand that we need to show that why we are different. And that's how we try to build the trust between the person who is working for the company and the person who is searching for a job.
Well, that's why the 30-second pitch is so critical, right? Because you basically have 15 to 20 seconds of someone's attention span, especially when you have to do it virtually, because there's so many distractions. You see so many people on the screen, things of that nature. All right, guys, it's 1:30, so it's time to bring on our friend Naomi Pearson, and let's welcome her to the broadcast. Say, hey, Naomi, how are you?
Good.
It's nice to see you. Thanks for being a part of this, and I'd like to introduce you to Vaibhav, Mahake, and Pratik.
Hi, Naomi.
Hi, Naomi.
Hi.
So Naomi is a U.S. immigration attorney hailing out of the great city and state of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Is that correct?
St. Paul, but we're off in
St. Paul. St. Paul. It's kind of like Dallas, Fort Worth, right there.
Yeah.
You mentioned in the same place. So, so Naomi, I'd like to turn it over to you for just a couple of minutes just to introduce yourself, how long you've been doing it, what you do, how you help your clients, and then we'll let our three panelists start asking you questions.
Well, I started my practice in 1996. Initially, because I was interested in doing asylum law, and there was a push in the local bar to train attorneys to take on pro bono cases to represent people who are fleeing persecution in their home countries. And that was very satisfying, but also stressful. And I did get almost all my cases prevailed. My first case was an Ethiopian fellow who was in trouble with the Ethiopian government because he was involved in a pro-democratic party in Ethiopia, which is a very repressive country. And so he was in the United States, and we worked very hard on his case. And at the end of the interview, the officer said, "Well, how long have you been doing this?" And I had to be honest and say, "Well, it's my first case." And he said, "Well, this is the best case I've ever seen presented, and I'm about to retire on Friday after 30 years. So I think you should stick with it." So I thought asylum law was a good way to start. You learn to make the case, you interview people, you have to know the law. And then a friend of mine heard that I was doing immigration law, and there's a woman in her firm who didn't want to do it anymore. So she basically kicked off my employment-based practice and with some companies, and it just took off from there. So I basically now do employment-based H-1Bs and green card applications. Family-based, let's say you meet a U.S. citizen, you fall in love, and you want your spouse to become a permanent resident, and also citizenship and naturalization cases. I'd say the great majority right now are H-1Bs. People have just graduated, and those employers that are open are recruiting. And a lot of new hires are working by distance. And then we're proceeding to the green card process. So I'd say about 85-90% of my cases are employment right now today.
Got it. No, thanks very much for that. And so I'm going to let my friends here ask some questions. So guys, who wants to go? Well, let's start with Mahek. Mahek, you want to go first?
Sure. So, hi, Naomi. My name is Mahek, and I'm an international student. Recently graduated in March 2020, and since then we are looking at the pandemic. So I'm finding it a little difficult to get to a job, and I need your suggestions or tips. When I go and talk to recruiters or maybe some consultancies, so they usually ask about that whether you can work on EAD. Yes, I have, but then the company had to sponsor me. But because of so many rules and regulations getting changed in between, so the companies are also hesitant. So what do you suggest in this situation? How should I go about this?
What's your field? What's your field of study? What did you graduate in?
Mahek, you're on mute. Can you hear her? She's in IT. She graduated, I don't know if it was in computer science. Mahek, go ahead. Can you hear?
No, I wasn't able to hear Naomi.
Sure.
Sorry.
She asked you what your field of study was at Northeastern.
Okay, so I just did my MS in project management with concentration in agile project management and business analytics. And I also have an MBA degree in international business and finance.
So your degree is a master's degree, the one from Northeastern?
No, I'm not able to hear her.
So that's
It's
weird that
working
you're not
here.
able to. Yeah, it's Pratik and Vaibhav. Can you hear her?
Yeah, as far as I know, her degree is in project management. from Northeastern here in the US.
A master's or a bachelor's?
Masters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess there haven't really been that many changes. I don't know if she can hear me. Can you hear me now? Okay. Somebody will take notes and share it with her.
Yes.
There haven't really been that many changes in H-1B rules. It is true that the Immigration Service is stricter in applying whatever standards there are. But I think the biggest concern right now is that there's a limited number of H-1Bs available in private industry. So I guess the two suggestions I would make would be to look for jobs outside of the Boston area, because there are probably a lot of foreign students applying there.
She's moving to Minneapolis. She's moving to Chicago. Sorry, Naomi. She's moving to Chicago.
Okay.
So she is moving out.
And also look for jobs with employers who are exempt from the cap. Universities, often medical centers, school districts. You might not get the money that you would get in private industry, but it doesn't make any difference when they hire you, because there's no worry about an H-1B cap.
So those folks are exempt from, so universities, school districts, medical centers. Is that what you said?
Well, it's universities, and then not-for-profit organizations. They have affiliations with institutions of higher education. So the classic ones right now are the type of, like, for example, a medical center, a hospital medical center that provides residency, training to doctors. They would have an affiliation with an institution of higher education. School districts, often for purposes of student teaching, have affiliation agreements. Universities just straight off are not concerned about the cap, and there's a lot in the Chicago area. So I think the problem right now in private industry, and actually in a lot of companies, is that there's a great deal of uncertainty about their businesses, their revenues, and whether they can afford to bring someone on. But if you're in an industry that's essential, then you might have a better chance of being hired, because they need IT services. I don't know. I mean, I know financial, well, no. I mean, there's a company I've worked with in Alaska that hires a lot of IT people. And that works out because they, I guess not a lot of people want to live in Alaska. So those are my recommendations. Always apply for OPT before you graduate. If you can, move to an area where jobs are more available, and apply for jobs with employers who are exempt from the cap.
That's terrific. So Mehek, did you hear any of that?
She didn't hear you.
Well, she's on mute.
Mike, I have the phone on, so I think there is a time lag. So I'm able to hear her, but on a different device. So yes,
Yeah.
I'm able to hear her.
Perfect.
Oh,
so basically, move to Alaska. No, I'm kidding. Well, but she's got a great point, right? Go where the jobs are, and where, in smaller communities. Yes, you want to live in Chicago. It's more accepting because it's a big city. It's diverse. And we completely get that, but let's say I don't want to pick a private company, but I guess if let's say Walmart was an option, you would move to Bentonville, Arkansas for the job, would you not?
Yes, I will. So
Yeah.
it's like I'm flexible on job location as well. So being in Chicago or just being in Boston is not my criteria. So I'm open for all locations.
The problem with Walmart is that it's a private company, so they would be subject to the cap.
Yeah, they would be. Well, here's the bigger question on the cap is, when does the cap, is it on a calendar year?
It's on all the filings. Well, it was different this year. Maybe there's a different administration next year, but the process has changed somewhat, but generally the applications start being filed around 6 months before the new federal fiscal year, which is October 1st. So between now and April 1st, people are, well, usually after October 1st, but you have this period before April 1st when people start putting together their cases. So it's April 1st, and usually all of the H-1B visas are gone within a week or so.
Well, and I guess everyone would have this question. I mean, given the current administration, given the high unemployment rates, is it less likely than other previous years in, good employment years and good economy years to obtain an H-1B this year versus, let's say, last year?
Well, right now, today, at this moment in time, unless an employer filed for you on April 1st, you don't have an opportunity. I can't see your name, Mesa or Mehta? Mehta, you'll be able to apply if you get an opportunity, a job opportunity, then there's STEM extension. So you still have, unless the rules change, an opportunity to, you have 3 years when you're work eligible, unless the government changes it. But right now, if you have a degree and you didn't have a job offer, you have to look for a job in a cap exempt industry, because there are no H-1Bs for another year. We're out. But you don't. That said, the employer does not have to prove that there were no U.S. workers who applied for the job. They just have to prove that you have the qualifications for the job, which is that the job requires a college degree in a particular field, and you have the degree in that field. So right now, today, there are no H-1Bs. You could get a job offer based on OPT, but you won't get an H-1B sponsorship until next year.
So she could carry her F1 though, right?
OPT extends your F1.
Yeah.
So you have some time to get a job.
Perfect. Let's hear what who wants to go next? Who has a question for Naomi?
I was having a question, Naomi. There are a lot of speculation going on about removing out the STEM extension. So what should we do? Like, what should be our plan of action if it gets abolished? And what do you think? Who all will be getting affected with that?
Well, if that happens, there'll probably be a lawsuit. I think you just have to live your life. I mean, I often see a lot of recent graduates with a great deal of fear about what can happen. So if in fact the president gets his way, then, and Stephen Miller, then anybody in a STEM field would not be eligible for the STEM extension.
Wow.
There's also talk of eliminating the OPT. But, we don't have that much time left, and there's still a pandemic, and there's still police brutality. There's just a lot of issues out there.
Welcome to America.
Yeah. I think I'd focus on the present just to keep yourself from going crazy. Oh, we just lost someone. And get a job with your OPT, and hope for the best. Or fall in love.
There you go. Well, I mean, so does that mean that you had mentioned it would just be a huge fallout from the companies going, what the heck? Nobody came to us. I mean, does it have to go through a congressional approval to
everything that has been issued in terms of an executive order since January of 2017 has all been executive order. None of this has been legislation, and a lot of this has been challenged. A lot of it, and some of it's still in litigation. Think of all the challenges there were for what was called the Muslim ban. Now there's again more travel restrictions. If you're Chinese and you work in a defense industry, that's a restriction. If you're abroad, you can't get a visa to come in, that's a restriction. I mean, there's just a lot of restrictions, and none of it's legislation. It's all been by executive order, and which is not, well, which is typically not how immigration law is made. So I think you just have to live your life. I mean, the bottom line, frankly, is that when you came as a student, you weren't promised a future here. And that's the view of the government. I don't think it's necessarily fair, but you can also think about your home countries and see if there's companies there that have relationships with companies in the United States, affiliation, subsidiary. And then after working for a company in another country for a year, then you could try to get a transfer under intercompany transferee, which is L1, but that's unusual. Where are all of you from?
So I'm from Boston.
I'm sorry to ask this question.
Originally.
Are any of you born in other countries?
Yeah,
All of us are
originally
from
I'm from
India.
India. Yeah.
Okay.
I think all three are from India.
You're all from India. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, there are treaties with some countries, let's say Australia, that provide alternatives to the H-1B, and with Canada and with Singapore. And it's just here and there are some treaties, but none of you benefit from them.
Correct.
Though all three countries you mentioned are pretty nice to live in. So, when I think you bring up a good point, Naomi, especially for people that are in a job search, is to utilize your connections back in India to help you. Maybe they have connections in the consulate, in the U.S. consulate. Maybe they have connections
not with
in
the consulate. That won't help. I mean,
that won't help.
The connections need to be for job searching. I mean, what would a consular connection do? It can't get you an H-1B.
That's true. So
you have to have an approved petition.
Just use your connections is the best way to advise I would give. Use your connections to your advantage in any way, shape, or form.
They're also, I know you're doing more traditional things like job fairs, but if you get creative and think about, well, where could my skill set be used? Then you could look at, let's say, universities in your area and see if they're looking for people with your skill set. Just do a broader search, don't necessarily look for jobs that are obvious to you, but look for jobs, do a search for more creative uses of your degrees that are in companies that are exempt from the cap.
That's probably the best piece of advice right there.
That's the best piece of advice, yes.
So, Vaibhav, what questions do you have for Naomi?
I have a similar question, like on a general terms, where does the US government sees the OPT or the F1 visa students, visa holders? Because the F1 visa holders are not only the students in various universities of US, but they also pay taxes while they are earning. So, what are going to be the precautions of abolishing the STEM OPT visa?
There aren't any. I mean, it's the president will do what he wants to do, but you have to give notice and comment. I mean, we're in June. The election's in November. Hopefully we'll get a change. I mean, what I'm telling you is that what we're living now under is a system where you get no notice, where there's a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment among people who are in control. And you just have to, walk one foot in front of the other and not worry about that. Because all the actions that the administration's taking, and this is not with legislation, a lot of them are being challenged. I mean, there's a lot of lawsuits going on. So I'm just waiting to see what happens. You have to, I don't know if you get the New York Times, but I would subscribe to a version of the New York Times or Washington Post and get, they're pretty cheap for students, and just subscribe to newsletters and bulletins on immigration. I mean, it's not your fault that you came to school at a challenging time in the U.S. And I know that I'm confident you all you'll find a place to hang your hat. And also, one thing to know is that just because one company files an H-1B for you, you're not married to them. I mean, you can also find other work. You can decide, as long as you're in H-1B status, you have 6 years of H-1B status, unless a company files a green card for you, and then you can keep on extending it. But you're not married to an H-1B employer. I mean, maybe accept a job that's not perfect in the hopes that they will file an H-1B for you, and at least give you a basis for staying on beyond OPT.
Right.
All right. So beginning to wrap up here. Any other questions for Naomi?
Are you thoroughly depressed now?
No, this has been. That's a good question. But well, look, I told them before we jumped on, so just anticipate learning things, but also anticipate there could be some news you're not going to love. So and look, it's reality. I'm with you. Let's get a change in this dictatorship and move back to a democracy and make things what they are again, right? So, but
I don't doubt for a minute that you want to make your families proud and start earning a living. I don't doubt that, and that's a viable and important thing to consider. But think about jobs in places which maybe don't pay the highest salary, but you could be doing good in the world, and also getting an H-1B and a CAP exempt employer. So, I mean, for example, to spin this more, I don't know if you're all in IT, but I've done work for IT people who, for research, for foundations that do research, data, social science research. So that's an application. People, there's several children's hospitals here. IT people are needed for electronic files, for for all the data that a hospital medical center keeps. There's school districts have massive needs for IT people because of all the data requirements of union contracts, student data, teacher salaries. I mean, so think creatively. And also, I don't know if it's a comfortable thing, but if you run into an employer who says, well, sure, I'll offer you a job, but I don't know anything about the H-1B process, I'm permitted to help the employer and you in another state. So if you want just a name to latch onto, that you can say, I know of an immigration lawyer, she can help you noodle this out, and that would be fine with me. So at least one immigration lawyer in the world, and sometimes that helps. It's a very scary process for employers.
Yeah, I mean, and Naomi, before you popped on, I used to do this for companies where, I had to go through the whole LCA and do the postings, the positions, and I mean, it's not that it's just tedious, and you got to pay attention because you have to leave your public applications up for, I think, a period of 2 or 3 weeks, and then you've got to post consecutively, and I think what it comes down to is cost over time as well. So how do they get over that hump of the cost? What are some creative ways companies are doing that these days?
Do you mean so it doesn't cost as much?
Well, yeah, or just do they just need to be okay with that cost, right? I mean,
well, I guess it depends on if they value what you have to offer. I mean, there's no question. The filing fees, premium processing is $1,440. If it's a private company, Then there's a fee, a U.S. worker training fee that's $750 or $1,500. Then there's an anti-fraud fee of $500.
Mhm.
And then there is the basic filing fee of $460, which I'm sure is higher than when you did it. So often they'll ask me about the costs, but and then I could tell them if it's a sophisticated employer who knows how to craft job descriptions and has a good eye to detail, then I'll offer to bill them at an hourly rate, but cap it at a certain place. And if they can't stand that, if you have an employer who just can't stand the idea of an hourly rate, then we'll agree upon a flat fee. I've never had a company refuse to do any work with me because of the fees, because usually the person they want to file an H-1B for has a skill set that's very valuable to the company. So think about the skill set that you have that makes you different. Maybe certain software programming for large organizations, enterprise software. Maybe you have experience at home in your home country that's relevant. That's what makes the difference, is that they won't do it for unless they really value. And I've never had a employer say, no, that's too expensive, because I'll tell them you have to pay the prevailing wage. That's another cost. But most of them, once they decide to hire you, they know this is just the cost of doing business. And I it's part of my job to make it to make it fair and reasonable, also reflective of my skill and ability, and to fully disclose the costs up front.
So Naomi, thanks for being a guest on the show. What's the best way? I know I've mentioned it in the line above to connect with you on LinkedIn, but what is, if people have more questions or want to contact you for your assistance to help them through the process, is there a website? What's the best way to?
Well, my website's under construction. I'll give you my email address.
Okay.
Are you all ready?
Yep.
Go.
It's Naomi, Naomi, at Permanlaw, PERMANLAW.com.
And I'll post this in the comments as well.
And I'm in Minnesota, so we're Central Time. And actually, I don't respond well to LinkedIn. I can't log in, or I can't. I think email is just a better way to get through to me. Mm-hmm. I know that there are industries where people rely heavily on LinkedIn, but it's just never been a great networking vehicle for me. I always like email better.
Lawyers and doctors are not on, and I come from a family of lawyers. I just chose not to be one, and they don't participate on LinkedIn as well.
I think because we have other platforms that we use, and frankly, right. In immigration law, most of us get work by referral anyway. So that's how it works. Absolutely.
Well, everyone, thanks for being a guest, and thank you everyone who was on live. Certainly, if you have questions for Naomi, you can put them in the comments, even on the replay, and I'll make sure to get those to her and have her respond back to you. So
it will be fine with me. I know as soon as we end this, you'll have a question. It'd be fine with me if you ask me a question. So anytime by the end of the day. Right? And if you meet with an employer and something's come up, just remind me of our connection and tell me how I can help you.
That's great. Well, thanks everybody here.
Thank you.
I'm gonna hit the end of the broadcast here. I'll ask for all my guests to stay on after I've ended the broadcast. So I want you all to be safe, be well, wear a mask if you have to go out, wear gloves if you're going to be touching things. Don't shake hands, don't touch elbows, just keep 6 feet apart. And, you guys have been terrific guests. You've answered, hopefully we've answered questions for you, and that makes you hopefully feel better about what you need to do. I think Naomi presented some great points about where to start looking And for those that are exempt from the cap, I think that's super important to know. And I wasn't aware of those exemptions, just because I've never worked for a company that's been exempt from the cap. So, so thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on the Job Seeker Journey US version at 1 p.m. Central Time. So with that, we say adieu, everybody. Wave, bye-bye.
Good luck.
Bye-bye.
And good luck.
Thank you.